despite the title itself, the Cheever Letters to me, even though there was basically like a main story, the fallout from what happened in the last episode with the burning down of Susan's father's family cabin, I feel like all the stories involved in the Cheever Letters were like equally as good. You have like your main story and your subplots, but I don't know what it was. I was because, I enjoyed one of the subplots probably a little bit better than the main story of this episode, but it was just one of those episodes where it's like the main subplot wasn't the most exciting thing. Still a good episode. I do like this episode. I feel like this was an underrated episode. I feel like, especially in a stacked a season 4. There was a lot of stories though in this episode. Some had like multiple stories. It felt like because Jerry and George kind of had 2 stories in this. Them trying to write 2 stories each. The one they shared was them both trying to write their pilot, but also Jerry had his situation with Sandra, and George was trying to break the news to Susan's father when he was first meeting Susan's father for the first time that his cabin burned down. So, interesting, combination of things. But I say if the main thing that the Cheever Letters is probably known for is this is the first episode where we meet Susan's parents. And actually, even though it was the first episode we meet them, we don't see them again until 3 seasons down the line when we get to The Rye, I think it is the next time we see Susan's parents. So this is an introduction, but we don't see them again for a long time. But let's talk about this episode, the Cheever Letters. So like I said, this is a fallout from what happened in the previous episode with Susan's father's family cabin burning down. And he really cherished the cabin, which of course is what Susan's father said he was told. Cherish the cabin. It was built in 1947, I think it was, he said. But the episode starts, of course, with Jerry and George at Jerry's apartment. And they're getting together because they want to they gotta get working on the pilot. It's been like a month and a half, and they still have not gotten anything written for the pilot. They have no clue what the pilot should be about. They're given this deal for a show about nothing, yet they have no clue what the story is for the pilot. So first they're talking about how George's going to meet Susan's parents for the first time later, and they sit down and they start writing, but they're just having writer's block. So then Jerry says he wanted to give Elaine a call. So he goes to call Elaine, but Elaine's assistant Sandra picks up instead. And then Jerry mentions how he always gets stuck on the phone talking to her for like 20 minutes. He just wants to get through and talk to Elaine. So he makes up a story. He's at a pay phone. He needs Sandra to hurry up and transfer over. So Jerry talks to Elaine. They get out when they need to get out. Then Elaine tells Sandra to not have, long conversations with her friends, which offends Sandra, who obviously is very sensitive, and those, I shouldn't say small things, but several things seem to make her upset real easily, that she storms out and quits. And of course, Elaine knows this is her fault because she shouldn't have said anything. Meanwhile, back at Jerry's apartment, Kramer came over, and he's asking George if Susan's father will give him some more Cuban cigars. But George is like, no, can't do. He goes, how is this man going to give us cigars when those Cuban cigars is what caused the cabin to burn down? Henceforth, him giving it to the person who had the cigars that caused the cabin to burn down. Kramer doesn't take this lightly, though, because the golf course that he was going to be getting, free games from in the previous episode, weren't going to let him play until he gave him a Cuban. So of course he's trying to come up with another plan. He's telling George he wants him to talk to Susan's father and get more Cubans. So then they start. At this point though, George is so distracted. He's like, I'm not even in the mood for this. So George leaves to go get ready to go to Susan's. Later, Elaine comes over, And Jerry finds out that Elaine said something to Sandra, and Sandra quit. Jerry, feeling bad though, says he didn't want that to happen. So he called. So Elaine dialed the number. He called Sandra himself, and talked to her, and kind of got a date with her. And I guess this means that him and the Elmer Fudd laugher, or whatever he wanted to call Naomi, beautiful woman, of course, but unfortunately she had that awful laugh that didn't make her and Jerry compatible at all. They decided they're going to meet him and go get a drink. So they kind of have like a sequence here where they cut to the scene with George and the Rosses, and then Jerry and what's going on with him and Sandra. So basically George's story is he goes there, and his father, Susan's father, who's come across as like serious and intimidating, is like asking him questions. Well, first off, he was told that they think that he looks like one of Susan's sisters, but of course later on when we see the actual sister in person, she's like, he does not look like me, or not sister, aunt, cousin, one of her relatives, and she said he does not look like me. So they're having a serious talk. So they're talking about the Cubans, which he says, oh, did you like how do you like those cigars that I got you? And then he says, George lies, I sucked them all down, even though he gave them all to Kramer, and they all got burned in the cabin. So then it later gets to, oh, so how'd you like the cabin? And then George, more nervous, like, well, Susan? And basically they're going back and forth, like, sharing who's going to, break the news even more to her father. So eventually it gets out that, of course, after her father does this very long speech about the cabin, he also says the line of, cherish the cabin, which I think was like the favorite. No, I'm sorry. It was the line of the main story, but it was not the line of this episode, which the ending, I cannot wait to talk about that ending. So he says cherish the cabin, blah, blah, blah. Then they break the news that the cabin burned down, which her father takes it pretty hard and walks out of the room. Meanwhile, Jerry goes out for a drink with Sandra. They go back to the apartment. They're fooling around in the bedroom. And then Sandra just books it out of there and is offended. She's upset and all this jazz. And then she leaves. Apparently, Jerry said something that offended her. So in the next scene, Jerry's at Monk's the next day with George. And he's telling about his night. How he goes out to have a drink with her. And she starts rubbing his leg. What he should have done, as he said, was say, like, what are you doing? But he was into it. He thought she was attractive, and he was, he really liked what she was doing. It ended up, of course, them going back to the apartment. And, of course, they're in the bedroom, they're fooling around, and she starts with the dirty talk. And George is, like, throwing, a napkin in down. He's calling for, a waiter after everything. Jerry's saying, details, like, what'd she say? I'm going to need some water here. He's like, saying all these, silly remarks, after everything that gets, more and more juicier. So then, Jerry gets to the dirty talk and everything. And you didn't hear what Sandra apparently said. But, But when Jerry tells him what Sandra said, which we don't hear, George is holding a ketchup bottle. I like how he was like, the way he reacted, he squeezed the ketchup bottle, was he just couldn't believe what he heard, which was priceless the way he reacted to it. So then Jerry says he wanted to kind of keep up with how good she was doing. So I guess apparently Sandra was saying something about her panties. So Jerry said the well-known, the panty remark. We've had the pony remark, which is the actual name title. Now we have, what's the actual title of the episode? But now we actually have the panty remark, where Jerry apparently said, you mean the panties your mother laid out for you? Which offended Sandra, saying he thinks he's really sick, and just threw a fit and ran off. Now, Jerry, though, is worried that because he was trying to help talk Sandra into go back to work, but Jerry was worried now that what if Sandra told Elaine? And Jerry did not want Elaine to find out about this bad incident. Or of all this in general. I mean, she knew he was going out with her to get a drink, but he didn't want her to know all this happened. So he was nervous about that. And then, of course, he also asked, of course, how Mr. Ross took the news, which didn't take too good. So they tried to go back to the apartment and work again. They're literally not. This whole episode, they did not get past hi, hello, how you doing, basically. For the first scene of the script for the pilot. Kramer walks in. Of course, they're trying to find an excuse to, be distracted and whatnot, but Kramer says he'll leave and whatnot. He asks George, if he talked to Susan's father and got more Cubans. He said no. Kramer, of course, complains, and then he goes off, and he actually finds some Cubans himself with some other, people who work with, people from Cuba and whatnot. He works with them, and he gets them all cigars. They all go play golf, and basically. So that's how Kramer resolved his thing. Jerry, meanwhile, is just worried that Elaine's going to find out about the panty remark. So she came over, and she's thanking Jerry for, having her come back and whatnot. So Jerry's just, basically telling her Elaine, no, you don't want her to be there. You want to fire her and whatnot. Because he's too afraid that she's going to tell him about the panty remark. And he even said, did you say anything else? And he seems worried, but he's trying to make it obvious that there's nothing he's worried about, but he's just not doing a good job with it. So then Jerry and George go out to Susan's apartment, where Susan's parents are there. The one person that they thought George looked like was there, but she says, he doesn't look like me, and Susan's brother who was home from college. While they were there, they have, this is show how, this whole story of Susan's family being very, dysfunctional and whatnot. We have someone show up saying this was the last of the remains of the burned down cabin, which was a bunch of letters. And the letters were from the author, John Cheever. Susan starts reading one, and is disturbed because it came across as her father was having a love affair with John Cheever. And of course he said, P.S. Love the cabin. Didn't say cherish the cabin, he said love the cabin. Her dad came out and ripped them out of her hands, and he was just admits that it's true. He was one of the most, man he loved very much, a love that you wouldn't even be able to understand, and he just storms out of there. So Jerry and George were going to get ready to go see a movie. Right, they're going to go see a movie because they were trying to, help them, get their brains going with trying to write the script for the pilot, even though it kept not working. So, the last scene. This is one of my favorite endings to a Seinfeld episode. The last scene, Jerry and George were again trying to work on the pilot and struggling still. Elaine stops by and she's mad at Jerry, which Jerry thinks is because of the panty remark. He still thinks Elaine has no clue about the panty remark, because Elaine mentions that she got Sandra moved, transferred to an upstairs office, but she blabbed to Lipman about her long-distance calls to Europe. So she has to pay a fine of $429 or something like that. Jerry offers to do it for her, so gives her a check of that money. And he said, we gotta get back to work. And as they're going back to sit down, Jerry doesn't even have his full butt on the chair. As Elaine is leaving and says, well, also, I forgot to mention too, in the scene also, while this is going on, George is reading a book by John Cheever on the couch, for the heck of it. But as Jerry's going to sit down, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus even said she loved this ending, and it got one of the biggest pops in the series. Louder than when Kramer would get his big, pops whenever he would make his endings, where they told him to stop applauding for him when he did that. It was distracting. Elaine is leaving. She goes, I'm going to go over, something about seeing her mother or something like that. I gotta go visit my mother. I just got new panties and they're all laid out for me. And she shuts the door and leaves as the audience just popped. Jerry and George are in so much shock. And Jerry didn't even have his butt on the couch. It was just one of those things where it's you're sitting down and it's... It was so beautiful. Again, one of the best ending lines to end an episode. We have one, of course, coming up in, I can't remember. I can't remember if it's on the next disc or the following disc or what. But I'm pretty sure it's this season. But when there's another like really great exit, but it was one of those things like it's happened a couple times in this series. Like you didn't think the one person was aware of what something that happened. Jerry didn't think Elaine knew about the panty remark, and then all the time she did, and then she just like caps it off at the end, going, was saying that I'm going to visit my mother. She got me some panties, and they're all laid out for me. Which Julie Louis-Dreyfus again said she was just so proud of that scene, and the big reaction she got from the crowd. Like they did this scene like 3 or 4 times, and apparently the reaction was much longer than shown in the episode. They had to, of course, edit it out so shorten it because they only had a few precious seconds, of course. But it was a great reaction and a great way to end the show as well. That's the Cheever Letters. Again, a very an underrated episode. Like I said, the main takeaway for this episode was was the fact we met Susan's parents, Susan's very dysfunctional family, and of course them having the breaking news about the cabin and the panty remark, which apparently came from a real life incident with writer Tom Leopold. But overall, a good episode. I enjoy it. The next episode, though, it's good. It's a little on the creepy side, though. So, like I said, how I said in the Bubble Boy episode how Jason Alexander was definitely concerned that they were kind of stepping a little too far out of the comfort zone? Well, this one definitely got a little creepy. It was good, but it got a little creepy. We'll talk about that next, though. That is the opera. I'll be singing a little bit of opera. I don't know the words, but it was, we'll talk about when we get to the opera next. So, guys, what are your thoughts on the Cheever Letters? Will you guys cherish the cabin? Have you ever had an incident such as the panty remark or whatnot? Leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. Be sure as always to slap a like on the video and subscribe for more content to my channel. Follow me on Twitter as well at DemandAirBoy93. And I'll see you guys next time in the opera. So until guys, I'm checking out. Have a good rest of your night. Peace out, everybody.